Wonderful, thank you. I think great form today. Oh, great, yeah. We forgot to mention in the announcements, because they weren't written in there at all, but we do have an appearance by a mythical figure right after the service today. I've heard something about there's a reindeer and sleigh on their way right now, and I believe they are timed to arrive here just shortly after the service. So for those of you with kids, they will be here visiting. I actually have heard that Santa's in the house at the moment, but he's in disguise. Not disguise, but he's in disguise. All right. Take a breath with me. Today is our last day of celebrating the Advent season. And the Advent season is the season where we prepare our consciousness. We have a light we celebrate the Feast of Lights. There's so many, this whole month is a celebration of festivals of light in so many cultures. And so the Advent season, which actually predates Christianity but was made popular in Christianity, is that which invites us to prepare our consciousness for the renewal, the rebirth of light. It's a light that's always on within us, but sometimes it takes a little bit to see that light, to feel that light, to experience that light. And so we have to prepare our consciousness for that. And so the symbol of using 4 different weeks and 4 different themes to prepare for that is a powerful thing that reminds us of how to focus our consciousness, where to place our attention, and where to open our hearts. And so the very first week of Advent, we celebrated the idea of hope. And if, like me, you've ever been in a very dark place, and when we celebrate, we talk about the light is seeming to wane right now in the skies, right? And so it's that time of year when we don't have much in the way of light. And so there's the idea of keeping hope, of having hope. Some of you, some of us, I have been in a dark place where we suddenly lose hope. And that's a really, really dark place, right? And so it's the idea of having hope, of recognizing that even in the darkness, even as the light seems to be going out of whether it's the sky or certain areas of our lives or whatever, that we still maintain a hope that there is something still coming back. I love that phrase that says you need the darkness in order to see the stars. And so it's a time to remember that there are stars, there is always light on. So the first week was hope. The second week is once we move into hope, once we have hope, we can start to love again. And the second week is love. And so we celebrate this idea of love. We celebrate the idea of that as we have hope, we can love ourselves, we can love each other, we can love the circumstance we're in, even if it's awkward and difficult at the moment. And so we move into that love, and we recognize that as we give love, we receive love. What we put out comes back to us. And so we start that cycle again. The third week, the rose-colored candle is in the Catholic tradition known as Gaudete Sunday. Gaudete is the Latin word for rejoice. It comes from one of Paul's letters, and it says, rejoice, rejoice. And so it's our invitation to rejoice, right? Even in some of those, sometimes we think of the Gospels as being kind of dark and dismal a little bit, or the Bible. It's like there's joy. There's actually a lot of joy and love and light in the Gospels, okay, in the Bible. As there are in all sacred traditions. And so we're invited to move into joy. We're invited to move into rejoicing. So are you there with me on that? Have you had a week of joy? I have. Okay? And then finally this week, we move into a week of peace. As we begin to recognize that light really is being reborn within us and coming back, we move into a sense of peace. We move into a sense of, yes, all is okay with the world. That time when I felt scared, when I felt nearly hopeless, is coming to an end, and I can be back at peace again. And so the Bhagavad Gita has a wonderful, I know it's odd to quote the Bhagavad Gita for Advent, but we're kind of honor all paths to God, so just walk with me here. So when we are at peace, our mind is less agitated. The Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna talks about the people who are walking the path, and he says, not agitating the world, nor by it agitated. They that love spirits stand above the sway of elation, competition, and fear. accepting life, good and bad, as it comes. And so we move away from agitating the world and being agitated by the world into that place of peace. And so that's my invitation this week as we live in a week of peace. And when we do that, this is the birth of the Christ consciousness, what we call the Christ consciousness within. The birth of the light, the birth of the peace. And so we prepare, we do our last week of preparation for that by being at peace, by trusting, by knowing that this light is being reborn within us. And we will celebrate that at the end of this week, both on Christmas Eve and then on the Christmas Day service. So our talk title this week is, We Look Too Far Away from Reality. We look too far away from reality. And the vision, the statement from Ernest Holmes is that I believe that the universal spirit, which is God, operates through a universal mind, which is the law of God. That's simple, isn't it? There's a spirit. It operates through a universal mind, and then it operates through us. It's the law of God. It's the law of creation. Ernest says that the light is greater than the darkness, nor has the darkness any power over the light. By merely bringing in the light, the darkness vanished into its native nothingness. This is the power of reality. This is a capital R reality. This is the power of reality over seeming opposition or apparent separation. See, we don't have to fight the darkness, do we? We just be the light. The light doesn't have to go to battle with the darkness. It just is the light. And darkness simply is the absence of light, so it vanishes into the no-thingness that it truly is. So our invitation is to be the light. We can get all caught up in making our relationship with the infinite overly complicated. I've done that. Probably some of you have done that or experienced that. You know, we create rituals that we must do. You know, growing up Catholic, it's like I had to not eat meat on Friday, or I would go to a very dark and fiery place. Okay? Today you can eat meat on Friday, except I think it's during Lent, and not go to that dark and fiery place. We create these rituals. We create eating, things we're supposed to eat or not supposed to eat. We create postures. We have certain words or incantations or chants, all of which are really designed to try to please a God that doesn't need to be pleased. To please that which already is completely in joy, in love, and in light with us. So you please God already. Do you know that? Just your existence is the pleasure of God. God is having its pleasure being you and me. Isn't that cool? Yeah. Okay. I have a friend who says, we're here to show God a good time. So let's get on with it. You know? God is having its life as us. My friend Edwin Gaines says that this is the party planet, and you can count on me to do my part. Okay? And so this is the joy we talk about. You know, sometimes we get all serious about spirituality. Have you ever noticed? Okay. But spirit isn't serious about spirituality. The infinite is having a blast. I think it's Emerson who said that we struggle and strive, but the infinite lies in smiling repose. It's just relaxed. It's having a good time. Let's join it. Okay? That's what we're here for. And then once we try to please a principle, we get into arguments with other people who are trying to please the principle with a different process, right? And we go to war, and we make stuff up. And we don't have to do that. It's a much simpler process than that. Ernest says that to return to a sane simplicity is one of the first and most important things to do. A sane simplicity. All people receive some light, and this light is always the same light. There is one nature diffused throughout all nature, one God incarnated as all people. There's only one. And so all these people that we struggle and strive with, whether it's internally or externally, it's just us. It's just one. All of us are one. And so it's important to remember that. Last week we talked about having a personal relationship with the divine. A personal relationship. Because each of us is the divine in form. And so we are the personal experience, the personal expression of the divine. You and I automatically have a personal relationship. Emerson says that we are inlets to the divine and may become outlets to the divine. See, that may become is our choice, okay? We're a choice of how much of the divine we're going to share out. But we already are inlets to the divine. We're already connected to it. You can't disconnect. You can feel that you've disconnected. You can believe that you've disconnected, but you've never disconnected. And the divine is never disconnected from you. It's impossible. It's impossible. So we're that already. So we run and recognize and take this awareness and how to apply it in every little detail of our lives. It's not just for, the high esoteric things. I remember once in a while I hear somebody who says, well, can I do a prayer? Can I do a spiritual mind treatment, as we call it, for this? And it's like, you can do it for anything. I do it for finding my car keys when I lose them, It's like, whatever. If I'm not sure what to do the spiritual mind treatment for, I do the spiritual mind treatment for knowing what I want to do the spiritual mind treatment for. It's anything. What's the perfect Christmas present to buy for this person? Do a prayer, get clear with spirit. Oh, listen to the intuition. Not the ads on the TV. Let us do away with, this is one of my favorite phrases out of the entire Science of Mind textbook. Let us do away with a ponderosity of thought. Spellcheck didn't like ponderosity. It tried to get it to ponderosa, okay? Let us do away with a ponderosity of thought and approach this thing simply and quietly. Simply and quietly. It is the nature of the universe to give us what we are able to take. It cannot give us more. And that's it. That's our teaching in a nutshell. It is the nature of the universe to give us whatever we can take, whatever we can open up to and accept. And I could quit talking right now and you've just had the whole secret of life. But I'm supposed to keep on talking, so I'll keep on talking a little bit longer. It's the basis of our entire teaching. We live in a universe which corresponds to our thoughts and our beliefs. Okay? There's the wonderful phrase in Isaiah that says, before they call, I have answered. And the reason that Isaiah can say that, or have God say that, is because the gift is already given. The fullness of God is already given. Can we accept it? So the answer is already here. There's a saying in Zen that you can't ask a question unless you already know the answer. You can't ask the question unless you already know the answer. And so can we open up to that? So how does this work? Ernest says the relation between the individual and the universal mind is one of reflection. That is, what we image for ourselves, it images for us. So I'm constantly telling the universe, with my imaging, with my words, with my thoughts, what it is that I want to experience in my life. And like I always like to say, that's the good news, bad news of the teaching. Because sometimes when I'm listening or watching my images, when I'm listening to my words, I'm saying things or imaging things that I don't really want to have manifesting in my life. I'm just having fun having a little argument with somebody in my head, but I really don't want to have that argument. Okay? So what is it that we image with feeling and with belief? And that's what we manifest. And we manifest it through the universe corresponding to our image. It matches it. It doesn't have an agenda. You know, my friend Terry McBride, who's, I like to call Terry McBride a construction workers religious scientist. He has a kind of a rough edge to the way he does religious science. But he was a person who was in a construction accident when he was very young, when he was in his 20s, and needed a back surgery as a result of that. And after having the back surgery, the back got infected with E. coli. And he needed 26 more surgeries over years, several years' time, to work all that out. And during that process, they told him he would never walk again, that he would constantly have, we're going to talk about this in a moment, a colostomy, and that he should just accept it and get used to it. And the title of his book that he wrote about this adventure is The Hell I Can't, which gives you his attitude. Because he had read in the Bible that it said, all things are possible with God, and he actually believed that all things part. Not just a few things, not just some things, all things are possible. So he talks about using, and by the way, today he's climbed Mount Rainier. He walks, he talks, he's fully, highly functional, getting up there in years, but he's not had the life that the doctors described for him. And so at one point in time when he had his colostomy, he decided he didn't want to have a colostomy for the rest of his life. And he wanted to know what to do. He knew that if he could get his mind behind it and knew what it was supposed to look like, what needed to happen, that he could heal himself. Because his colon was riddled from the E. coli bacteria. But he knew that he could heal himself if he could just get the imaging that he wanted and to work with that. And in order to get that, he didn't know what it was because he was not a medical person. He needed to talk to a doctor, his doctor. And his doctor did not support his idea that he could heal his life. Let's just put it that way. And from what he says, that was the mild version. You could just say he did not support it. The doctor didn't believe it at all. Okay? So he spent a month visualizing, having a meeting with his doctor, and the doctor giving him the information that he needed in order to heal his colon. And he envisioned it as just this wonderful, nice conversation, respectful conversation. And finally, when he was deep into that, when he knew it was going to happen, when he was very clear on it, he made an appointment with the doctor, went into the doctor and met with him and told him that he'd like to know, he'd like to no longer have the colostomy and wants to know what to do to heal that. And the doctor basically blew up in his face, started yelling at him. Apparently, he stood up and started yelling at him, okay, and said, "You will always have this colostomy. You need to quit this stupid idea that you're going to heal yourself and just get used to the fact you're going to be in a wheelchair, you're going to have a colostomy," and just, boom, boom. And along this line, as he's doing this rant, he says, "Besides, in order to heal this colostomy, you'd have to have this happen, and this happen, and this happen, and this happen." And Terry walked out of the meeting smiling because he got the 4 pieces of information that he needed to heal his colon, and went about it and did it. Okay? So sometimes the meetings don't always go the way we want, but if we're clear in the image of what's the core of what I wanted. See, the core of the meeting wasn't to have a pleasant meeting with the doctor. That was the kind of the trappings around it. The core of the meeting was to get the information. And he imaged that, and he got that. That was the essence. That was the essential. That was what he really wanted. And he got that. So our part is to create images that we truly want, that we, from our heart, from our core, truly want. In this Prosperity Plus program, one of the questions we work with is, what would you truly love in different aspects of your life? We go through 4 different aspects of life. What would you love? Not what do you think you should have, not what does other people, my mother, my father, my spouse, my boss, my kids think I should have, but what would I love? And then we start to pay attention to, what do I contemplate? What do I contemplate with my mind? What do I love by paying attention to it a lot? Okay? How many of you know one thing that I love by paying a lot of attention to it? There we go, chocolate. Okay, I talk about it. We could say the Oregon Ducks or the Seahawks, whatever, because I pay a lot of attention to it. Okay? What do we pay attention to in our minds? What's the constant story? I sometimes have stuff that I'm paying attention to in my mind that I'm working with that aren't things that I love. And I have to catch myself when I'm doing that and say, oops, reposition the mind. Image a new image. Okay? Imagine our mind works like a movie projector. And I think most people in this audience are old enough to remember movie projectors. If not, see me afterwards, we can explain the mechanics of that. In a movie projector, the light is always on. The light is always on, right? It's just shining. And in front of it runs a film. And does the light of the light care what movie is in front of it? Does it have an agenda? No. It just shines through whatever is projected in front of it. Okay? And it projects that then onto the screen. So the light has no agenda. It just shines on it. We're the projectionists. We get to choose what movie to load. We get to choose what movie we're loading. We get to be the directors. We get to be or select the actors. That person you don't like in your life, you chose to have them show up for some reason. Okay? Not always conscious. Sometimes we're doing this unconsciously. But we get to choose the movie we're running, and we get to change the movie if we don't like it. Okay? Now, we don't have to create the light, do we? The light's just always already there. The light of Spirit is always on, already here. I don't have to create the light. I just have to let it shine through me. And then I get to choose what it's shining through me as. I get to choose what is it that I want to let that light project onto the screen. And again, this is that good news, bad news of this teaching. So many times our films have elements that were not consciously chosen. Have you noticed that? I've noticed that. You know, we have things show up that are not consciously chosen. Last week I was watching on YouTube, I happened to pick up a little blooper of newscasts video. And there was this one blooper where they were showing a newscast and the main person, what do you call them? The anchor, thank you. The anchor was talking about it, and she was going to deflect to a reporter who was on the scene to do a report. And she said, "You will now hear from this person." And the screen splits, and you can see this other person, and the other person is just standing there. Clearly has no idea that it's just been thrown to her. She's just kind of looking around, and she's live on TV, just looking around. And all of a sudden, you hear this soundtrack come in down below it, and it's apparently the editor or the producer who's in charge of it, and he's upset with a lot of colorful language, upset. Okay? And, ordering people to get that, that earpiece into that person so they actually are listening, and how could they do this to him, and all this stuff. And this track is running, this audio track is running underneath that. Well, I get the reporter connected, to the newscast, and she's doing the report. His soundtrack is still running. And the main reporter, the anchor, is still talking to her, and his soundtrack is still running, and he's letting the crew have it, on, and like I say, extremely colorful language. Okay? We have tracks like that in our own movies, don't we? We have the movie that we want to project, and then there's a soundtrack running underneath it. Okay? And so our invitation is to begin to be aware of that soundtrack and what it's actually saying. You're no good, you're worthless, nothing ever works out, there's not enough, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. I've got to make this person happy, I've got to make that person happy. All that stuff, we need to become aware of it and begin to turn it down. Begin to turn our underlying track down. And then we can start to run the film that we actually want to run, and just that film. Nothing more, nothing extraneous. So this week, what I want to invite us to do is first to pay attention to the movie that we're projecting. Just notice, what is the actual movie that I'm projecting, and seeing it clearly as if you were somebody else watching it. See, so often when we're projecting a movie, we don't listen to that underlying soundtrack. We don't hear it running because it's so normal for us. We're so used to it. You're not worthy of being paid more. You're not worthy of having the loving relationship you want. People are out to get me. All that stuff. You probably heard it from your mom and dad and siblings and school teachers and schoolmates when you were growing up. All that kind of chatter, right? Listening to that chatter, becoming aware of what's the actual movie that I'm really, 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 really running. Notice, first of all, what is working, because you want to notice what's working. That's a good thing to focus on. What's working in the movie? And then, what could be improved? See, no matter how good your movie is, it can always be better, because we're working, I love this, we're working in a field of infinite possibility of good. No matter how good my movie is right now, it can be better. It can be better. And the only thing holding me back from that is, how much more of that light can I receive? How much more of that can I let through? So what could be improved? That's the first part. Pay attention to the movie we're projecting. Second, if you have any unwanted track running in the background, and maybe one or two people in here besides me might have that going on, or somebody. You've got a cousin. You'll meet them at Christmas time. Begin to turn the volume down on that track. Begin to figure out what's going on with the track. Years and years ago, I was working with what I called my angry teenager. Okay, I dealt pretty well with my inner child to some degree. Some people would say I still haven't dealt with it yet, but but I had an angry teenager that would just come along and sabotage stuff. And so I finally sat down and I had to have dialogues with the angry teenager, just the same as I did with the inner child. Wonderful way to do that, by the way, is to do a right hand, left hand, or dominant, non-dominant, writing conversation. So your adult self is your dominant hand, what's going on. Your non-dominant hand represents your underlying track of what's really going on and what they're angry about, hurt about, scared of, things like that. And listen to that and have a conversation. So listening and having a dialogue, allowing that to have a voice, but not letting it run the movie. Okay? And then finally, choose a new track to create an even more wonderful movie. Replace that track with something new and choose it consciously. Ask your inner wisdom for guidance. We all have this wonderful inner wisdom self. You've heard it. Otherwise, you wouldn't be sitting here today. We've all heard that inner wisdom self. Ask it for guidance. How can I allow even more of this light through me? How can I allow even more of this love through me? How wonderful can it be? So that's our practice this week. Pay attention to what I am already projecting. If I have an unwanted track, start to deal with it. Start to turn the volume down on it. Start to work with it. And choose a new track to create an even more wonderful movie, how to expand it. So I invite you this week to play with that idea, to play with that spiritual practice. I want to close with a quote from Ernest, kind of in the same vein. I love finding this in the Science Mind textbook after I'd already done the movie projector thing. The will of God is always towards that which expresses life and happiness. So many times we listen, it's like, what's God's will in this? Okay, more life and more happiness. That's it. Okay, God doesn't want you to move to a certain city. God doesn't have an agenda that you take this job that you get paid not enough for, or that you have to suffer. God's will is more life and more happiness. Are we ready to play with God's will? I'm willing to go with God's will. Okay? The will of God is always toward that which expresses life and happiness. Life is a motion picture of subjective causes. What is the screen, and are the figures real? And Ernest says, yes, they are real, and no, they are not real. They are real as figures, but they are not self-created, and they are not self-perpetuating. In other words, they have no power. I give them the power as I project them into my life. How they show up in my life. They're real, but how I experience them on my screen in my movie is where I give them the power to be that. Happy is the one who holds the projecting machine firmly in his conscious thought and who knows how to make conscious use of it. And so I invite us this week to become more conscious of the movie that we're projecting and the amount of light we're letting through in our lives. Let's pray. There's only one life. There's only one life. And that is a life of joy. It is a life of happiness. It is a life of freedom. It is a life of light. Every mystic who has ever had that deep mystical experiences that infinite presence as light and as love. Those are the two qualities always present in any mystical vision. And we, because it's infinite, we are one of it. We have to be one of it. There's nowhere else to be. There's nothing that exists outside of that which is the infinite presence. And so we ourselves are that life. We are that light. We are that love. We are that conscious choice or unconscious choice, that deep yearning for greater life and greater happiness. That is what motivates us all. And so I speak my word this week, this day, that during this time we choose that life, we choose that happiness, we choose to be clear expressions of that light that already exists. And we choose to create a life that we love with the imaging we use. We choose images that manifest what it is that we truly, truly love. That we release any ideas that have kept us in lack, limitation, bondage in any way, because that is not the nature of God. That is not God's will for us. And it's not even our will for ourselves. We let go of those false beliefs, those false sayings, those false mumblings that are going on underneath, letting them go, dissolving into the no-thingness that they truly are. And out of that comes this light. We become the light. We are the light, and we broadcast that light. And for this I'm grateful. For each of us who really become aware ever more fully, even a little bit more fully, that we are that light. I'm so grateful Because as each of us becomes more of the light, and lets more of the light through, we light up the world. And we truly become the light of the world. And in gratitude for this, I release this word into that which we call law, the process of bringing that forward into form, into expression. We don't have to figure out how to do that. We just simply have to say yes to this vision, yes to this highest idea. And the universe knows how to manifest it, and we let it. And it does so. And together we affirm that by saying, and so it is. Bless you. Thank you.